dope. This looks so sick. What's up, guys? In this video I'm going to be doing another drone build on this frame. It's going to be a 6S build. So I'm going to go over the parts that I'm using for this real quick. This is the Venom 5-inch frame from Banggood. Here we have 4 Emax Eco 2207 motors. I'm going to make this a long range quad, and I'm going to be putting the FrSky R9 receiver on it. We have a Caddx Ratel with an adapter to fit the frame, a Rush Tank VTX, Lumineer antenna, and a 30x30 Mamba F722S stack. So this has the ESC on the bottom and the flight controller on the top. And the cool thing about this flight controller is that it has an app that you can actually configure Betaflight settings in. So that'll be cool to play around with. So all I'm gonna do, or first thing I'm gonna do, is I'm gonna take the top plate off on this drone and we'll get this mounted in. So now with the base of the frame, since I know the front is up here, I'm going to orientate the board on most of these boards. They'll have a little arrow pointing to the front, so you'll know that the camera is going to need to go this way, and you got motor 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to take these top nuts off, because the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to solder on the motors. And now our ESC is right here, so we have motor 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to start putting the motors on here. I'm going to just put this back over this, just so it's not flopping around too much on me. And then we're going to get these motors on. So I have these little landing feet, so I'm going to put these on when I put the motors on. Luckily these came with a little bag of extra bolts. And there's one motor. So I'm going to do the same to the other 4 arms, and then we will solder them onto the board. Alright, there we go. So each motor's on there. Each motor has landing gear on it. And we are ready to connect this to the ESC. So we can remove this top piece, kind of put it aside. This motor is going to this ESC. So I'm going to measure out about how long I want these wires to be. And I'm going to probably have them just go like that. So we'll say right in there. We'll cut it. So now these wires are ready to go on here. You can technically solder these on here in any pattern you want. So you could have this back wire go to the front pad. It doesn't really make a difference because you can change the direction of the motor all in Betaflight. Just to keep it clean, I'm going to keep it first, second, and last. So it's going to go like that. I'll probably just zip tie down the wires nice and neat right along there. So one thing that I like to use just to hold the wires still while I'm soldering is Loctite putty. This is basically just stuff that you would use to hang stuff on your wall, I suppose it's for. But it works perfect for just holding wires still. So and this just makes it a little bit easier so that I can put a little bit of solder on the end of these wires. So we're going to get these wires hot. Get some solder on there. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of solder on each pad. Alright, so I got solder on all of those ESC pads. So now I'm just gonna let it cool for a second because the board is a little bit hot, and I don't like letting it get too hot. So I'm just gonna let this sit for a second, and then we're gonna get these wires on here, and then we'll continue with the rest of them. I'm gonna turn it like this just so it's a little easier for you to see and for me to do. Two. And 3. So we got these 3 wired up, and I'll probably just tuck them down right like that. So now I'm just going to do the same for the other ESCs, and we'll move along. Alright, so I have each motor soldered up to the ESC, the 4-in-1 ESC. So now, just to make this look a little cleaner, I'm going to put a few zip ties around these wires just to tidy it up a little bit, and then we'll start going with the flight controller. Alright, so I got zip ties on the ends of each of these arms, and it's all soldered up. It's looking pretty damn clean. I'm probably going to have to take off these zip ties at some point because I do have LEDs that are going to be going underneath here. But all I'm going to do now is I'm just going to fold this back down over this, just like that. Perfect. So now we can get the camera all mounted in, get the VTX on the back here, get the R9 module soldered on here. I'm going to get the VTX mounted on here, and we'll continue. So the main reason that I went with the Rush tank is because it's 30 by 30 mounted. So when I bought this frame, after I bought it actually, I noticed that it did have another 30 by 30 mount right in the back here. So I'm going to mount the VTX right like this. The wires are right here, so I'm going to have them coming out and right over onto the flight controller. So I'm going to put 2 plastic standoffs in here, and we'll get that mounted up. Alright, got this on there, put some standoffs on top, and what I'm thinking I might do is I might actually take this plate and throw some VHB on the transmitter, and I might just put the transmitter on this board. So just like that. So then I can still read off this, and I just have the VTX sitting underneath there. So I'm going to throw some nuts on top of this, and we have these. And then it's literally just hooking up the FrSky receiver and the camera and a power cord for the battery, and that's that. Now I have the video, smart audio, power, ground. So I'm just going to plug this into the side. Now the VTX is all hooked up to the flight controller. I did put on a little bit of extra wire just so that's not tugging on the power. The smart audio and the video cable both have relatively long wires, so I just kind of had to add some to the positive and negative. So I'm just going to put some electric tape around this just to protect it, and then tuck it down the side like that. So now all it is getting the camera hooked up to these pads right here, and then the receiver hooked up over here, and we're good. Corresponding pads are right here. We have ground, 5 volt in the middle, and then I'm going to use the TX2 pad to run F port. And that is honestly it. I need to just hook up a power lead and this drone is done. Alright, so one of the last things I gotta do is just get the power cable on there. The Mamba F722 comes with a black XT60 connector, so I'm gonna use that. I think it'll look pretty cool. But I have a bunch of extra wire here, so I'm just gonna use that. And then I'm gonna end up running it underneath the VTX and out the back. You don't need to apply too much heat to this, it shrinks pretty easily. Especially if you just got done soldering the wires are probably still hot and it'll just shrink it on its own. But looks good. Alright, so to finish this entire build off, I'm going to take the VTX off of this stack, solder in the power, solder in the capacitor, and get it all back together. It's good. And now you got plenty of room to work on this. So I'm just now noticing that on the ESC, there's actually two holes, a negative in the negative and positive terminal, that I am going to use for this. Alright, so I got a zip tie just kind of holding the capacitor on. I actually might end up just keeping that there. But now I can flip this over and I can solder right on here. Alright, so now I'm going to measure out how far I want this power cable. So I'm going to give myself a little bit of slack. Let's say about that much. So these wires are just going to sit right underneath the VTX. So now I'm going to put all this back together and we'll plug it in. Alright, so everything's all back together. I haven't screwed this back down just in case I need to change anything. So I'm going to plug this in. I'm using a smoke stopper. So technically this should, if there's any shorts on here, I looked over both boards. I looked over all the solder connections. They all look perfect. They don't look like they're touching anything other than the pads that they're supposed to. So let's hope that this doesn't smoke. Awesome. No smoke. And what I think I might do is push it through this hole near the VTX and then have it secured down right like that. I might also have it, I don't know, I'm going to play with the connection of this, but ultimately I think I'm going to have the wires right like that. Dope. This looks so sick. Alright, so here it is. Fully built and pretty much ready to go. The only thing I'm really waiting for is a little mount for this. That's going to mount to these two standoffs, and the antenna is just going to be mounted up a little bit, right like that. I ended up running the capacitor directly underneath the flight controller, so it goes right up through the frame. And then I have the FrSky R9mm unit antenna coming right out through the bottom, held on with some zip ties. The actual receiver is actually kind of up close, kind of near the camera. But yeah, I'm pretty pumped to give all this equipment a shot. So the only thing that's left is plugging it into Betaflight and programming it. That'll be another video, or maybe I won't even film it. I don't know. Whatever, dude. Hope this helped someone build a drone.